This time we'll call to order the Board of Education Little Miami Local School Special Meeting for December 5th. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Grice, absent. Mr. Cremines?
Here.
Mr. Nemish? Here. Mrs. Jordan?
Here.
Mr. Haas?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, need a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll
second. Okay. Mr. Nemish, and second by Mr. Cummings. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cremines?
Yes.
Mr. Nemish?
Yes.
Mrs. Jordan?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes. Okay, at this time, communications and/or visitors report.
Yes, I guess that would be.
That would be you. Yes, it would be you.
I was nodding off. Good. We, per the discussion at our last board meeting, the board thought it would be good to hear some feedback from some teachers that participated in a digital pilot that we did a while ago. And so we have some of the staff here tonight to share some information and perspectives about that experience. Draw straws.
What do we want to know? What do you guys particularly, I mean, overall?
That's what you think? Yeah.
Tell us what we think. Well, I started this basically in the middle of September last year, followed all the way through the year. At first, there was a lot of problems in terms of communications, of what was called the LMS system, which we have now taken care of with Schoology, because I was using McGraw-Hill. So that was the biggest problem with the whole issue, but once we got past that, everybody was able to get logged on a daily basis, which is good, because that was our book. And that's one of the facets that we need to make sure that we understand with digital curriculum, that we either have a backup or that we have someone here in the building that can help us in that situation, because that's not a good situation. We can't get into that.
Could you walk us through what you, and I think I know what you mean, because I've seen it in some of the other classes at the school. The computers aren't coming up, you can't log on.
Well,
you
yeah,
can't open the
at that
documents.
point in time, it was a log-on issue. And it
Okay.
was more McGraw-Hill side than our side.
Okay.
So that, after everything was said and done, we actually stopped using the LMS. And once we did that, everything started utilizing their website a lot easier. That is the book.
Okay.
Okay. You know, when we talk about digital curriculum, I mean, we all have different definitions of what it's going to be, look like. The one thing that, you know, what I heard tonight in the meeting about the 21st century skills, that is something that, you know, this is going to help us with. And understanding all the things that are out there to utilize in the classroom, for the kids to learn how to utilize in the classroom. Even for myself, I mean, I'm still learning a lot of this stuff as we move along. And it's going to take a little bit of time from that aspect as well. The digital side of it, I kind of felt it was about a 50-50 split in terms of the students enjoying it, okay, versus the ones that like the book better. I think that's just going to take a little bit of time, because after all, I was the only American history class doing it, and there was what, 4 other classrooms, I think, doing it as well. So there's going to be a learning factor involved with that for both the students and the teachers as well. Overall, I'll be honest with you, there were so many different things that you can do that I didn't even get to, because one, I didn't understand a whole lot of it, how things were working back and forth. But as every year as we would teach with it, I would think we'd be able to expand on a lot of various different ways that we can teach to that curriculum, and various ways for them to express, you know, in terms of their learning skills as well. And I think that's one of the biggest things with the digital side of it, is that we have a multitude of things that we can use, in essence, to get the same thing across.
So did every student have their
In my
own,
classroom.
did they have like a Chromebook cart, or do they have one they could actually
Nope,
take home?
They took it home. It was theirs. It was assigned to them. They were responsible for it. They had computer pouches or whatever that they carried them in to protect them. Did not have any issues with that side of it, which I'll be honest, I was surprised.
In terms of breaking, cracking,
Exactly.
I dropped it on the
That
floor
is
and the screen
ultimately,
broke.
I think, the biggest concern. I know there's various insurances and stuff that we need to talk about for that. I don't know that side of it, but I was fortunate. Really, the biggest problem in terms of that was periodically they would not be charged all the way. And that is something that, we would have to teach them to make sure it is.
So they come to class, you're in the middle of instruction, all of a sudden, oh, my laptop just died.
I had PowerPoint scripts sitting out if I had to, but the other aspect of that too, they're only using it for my class. So what happens that, if it's charged, I don't know the capacity of using it all day. Because if you get to that 7-period class, how are they gonna look? We gotta put some thought into that as well.
Did you run into any trouble with students not having Wi-Fi or internet access at home when they left?
Yes,
Just
there
like
was-
having trouble getting things done overnight?
Yeah, and that was one of the hangups, technically wise, because I think originally, what do we call it? There were thoughts that the Chromebooks were able to cache them, and that was.
What's that mean?
That's,
Means that they can take the information that they're working on and save it locally, so when they go home with or without an internet, they have the ability to work on that. McGraw-Hill told us that that was a capability, and it turned out really to not be a capability.
If their book was charged.
well, it's not so much the charging side. Let's just say I'm gonna assign chapter 1 or section 1. They don't have Wi-Fi at home. They should be able to download it to their Chromebook
At
or
school.
at school, take it home, be able to do it. That was not they could not do that with these Chromebooks that we have.
Did you find that there were a lot of kids in this day and age that were doing some on their Chromebook, and then they also might use their phone and use two different
Periodically,
devices?
I mean, there are some situations that I would, like for instance, I use this site called Kahoot for review situations. You don't need the device necessarily, although you could use it. Some kids pull their phone as well. Some kids do like their phone more than some of the devices. I mean, and let's be honest, their phones can.
Sure. And if some students,
They're always charged.
if they don't have Wi-Fi, they might still have data on their phone or parents' phone where they, okay, I don't have Wi-Fi when I get home, but I can read chapter, I can log into that learning management system right on my phone and still read chapter 2, or do even a Google Doc on my phone and share it with you, where I didn't have to, if I didn't, wouldn't need my.
Well, on some phones, you can use as hotspots.
Yep.
Do that too.
Mine was ninth grade math, a couple of differences. I did have some issues with some students, just as they are growing and maturing, forgetting to bring their devices in general, which was different. So we got to the point where I would keep an extra one in my room just in case. We had some charging issues and things like that. I think those are growing pains, just knowing the differences in the student that you have. Mine was very different. One thing I learned was in looking at resources, I would prefer something that's more flexible because it was very structured. Here's kind of question 1 and question 2 and question 3, and it wasn't very editable. So that's one of the things we learned is that when we look at something, our first question is, well, can I adapt it for what I want to use it for as a teacher and pick and choose what I like? That was one of the things we didn't like about McGraw-Hill. It was just very structured where you didn't really have a lot of freedom. But there were a lot more tech issues at the beginning. Really, everybody would be logged in, but then 2 students, the picture wouldn't show up correctly on their screen. And we think that was more of a McGraw-Hill side than it was on our technology. But then sometimes I would get kids that had internet access at home that said something wasn't popping up right. They had some questions. They were able to interact with me, though. They could send it to me, which they can email us now as well, or some other form like that. But it was the same thing. It was supposed to cache the system. I know that in looking at different kinds of things that were out there, your phone does have different capabilities on some things. Like there are some products that you can look at that it's just not as readable on the phone, but then other ones that it's just fine on the phone.
Regina, was there a gradebook component to the learning management system? And did everybody use the gradebook, or did they stay with what they already had?
Ingrade never got off the ground. We started with Ingrade, which is their learning management system. We had so many connectivity issues that we completely dropped Ingrade and just went with the content. And so we never got to that position.
Now, it did grade some things, like on the math side of things, I could assign things, or we could do things in class. It would give them some immediate feedback, which was really nice. Some of the students liked that, to know when they were heading on the wrong track. So that was a very nice thing about the digital. Some students would get a little bit frustrated because then they would feel like, well, I really don't know how to do it on my own, and I would like your help right now. Whereas if there's 2 or 3 people, you can't be in multiple places. But that's really no different than it's there. But I did like that they could kind of click some different things to get that feedback.
so the both of you see these growing pains, as you call them, go away?
I think they just change.
I think that, yeah, I think everything's just gonna change a little bit as we move forward.
Mhm.
You know, one of the biggest hurdles was just to get them to utilize it on a daily basis. And understand, you know, we all learn, like I said, I was in the learning mode as well. I mean, I was, wasn't necessarily schooled on everything at that particular time, so we were all learning together, which actually was a pretty good thing, because they told me more than what, some of the people that were helping me with McGraw-Hill.
Right.
So, that was okay. You know, but from what, kind of piggybacking on what she said, one of the good things about the McGraw-Hill side of it, and it's not just McGraw-Hill, there's various other entities out there as well, is there's a lot of practice in these programs for these students. Even on the social studies side of things, where there's, I know McGraw-Hill has Learn Smart, which actually gauges how well they answer the questions, and gauges whether the next question be harder or less harder. So it kind of grows with them, if you would, and actually it does show a little tree that shows them growing, kind of like a tree that we got went through the material as well.
So as a student goes through this, and let's say, like you're saying, they're answering the harder questions, where does it build that profile and keep it on that student?
In that Learn Smart program, I can go in and I can click on any one of those students, and I can see how long it takes them to do it. I can see what the part that they're lacking in. So I guess from the data side of things, you can actually that particular system kind of curtails to the deficiencies that they have. So what happens if they keep continuously missing the same question, all of a sudden off to the side comes up material that they need to reread.
Right. But I mean, I guess my question is, where does the data for that student stored? Is it on their local device, or is it stored web-based?
I think, that question I think would be a web-based situation.
So all the students' data on how well they did on tests and everything is somewhere off-site,
It would be through McGraw-Hill.
or whoever that we utilize.
That particular, I'm just talking about one particular add-on with McGraw-Hill that was, I kind of use it as a homework situation. And then it would be culminating until the test. So and all these were practice questions that they would be tested on.
Randy, if you remember when McGraw-Hill did the presentation, we had that exact same conversation, and they talked about their security and how their security was at the same level of highly, so we have had
Yeah,
that
yeah.
conversation before. You're right, Brent, it does house there, and we went through that and felt comfortable enough with it at that point in time for our students to participate. So it is kept on their site, and it's a highly secure site from their
Right,
perspective.
but I guess my question would be, legally, do we have the authority to put that student's data out? I don't know, I'm making up. The website is based in, Florida or California or wherever it might be. Well, I think that might be a legal question that we want to.
We have lots of student data out on websites.
I understand
We
that,
have IXL, we have
but I
Learning,
understand,
we
but I
have
understand there's
lots of
specific
pieces.
laws that have been passed for that. And that's why I would be curious
Yeah, I
about
think
that.
Regina is saying beyond this, we have other vendor programming that we use, that's
Yes.
student information, web-based data.
Well, again, the one that we were talking about, when the information, but if I remember correctly, didn't Bill determine that there was a law passed in the House of Representatives here in Ohio, talking about if you used an outside of the state lines vendor, wasn't there something along those lines?
I don't
That
recall.
data.
I don't.
Registrations in Pennsylvania, they're all over the place, I don't see how that even could be possible
Okay,
to be in state.
because I know everybody's got a secure,
I'm not aware of any legislation.
I know everybody's got a secure website, but I think we can ask our own Pentagon how well that works. So I mean, that would be my only concern at that point, is we've got data for everybody everywhere, how do we protect, our
Can
children?
you answer that?
I know we approved earlier before the school year, approved a contract to use Schoology. So who exactly is using,
So
full, are we
Schoology-
partial, or some people using it, or,
No, it is district-wide.
okay?
The method of Schoology the method of training everybody through Schoology is a train-the-trainer model. So all of our buildings have building level technicians within them. Those building level technicians have gone through a staff in their building. So at this point in time, everybody has had some training. The high school has actually had more. They have utilized their 90-minute delays. They had an in-service that had quite a bit of Schoology in it as well. At the lower grades, they've all received some Schoology training to where everybody should be able to get on, starting to create that website. Remember, that was the key for this year, is that all teachers will be using Schoology because our teacher websites are going away at the end of the year, giving that transition time. And then we'll continue to grow with Schoology as far as, grades or anything of that nature. That'll be transition to continue.
So my question was, I know it might be comparing apples to oranges, but you had McGraw-Hill with 6 or 8 months of the pilot program and a few months just to maybe get your feet wet in Schoology a little bit. Can you compare and contrast them a little bit in terms of ease of use and do you find it one to be more
Well, I think
user-friendly?
the question is how it's gonna be housed on Schoology, is that?
Yeah, because remember, we really didn't use N-grade, which is the McGraw-Hill's
Great.
Schoology piece.
Okay.
So we used.
Well, it didn't work. It didn't work.
Right,
Yeah, we
right,
didn't log
right,
into it. I
right.
mean, perhaps one person could and the next person couldn't. It was a strange situation. So it's really hard to compare N-grade and Schoology. We never got our feet wet.
But with,
N-grade.
and maybe I'm not, maybe I'm.
So they can.
When you use Schoology, you're either using teacher-created curriculum and posting it on there for students to access and use and do, or you're using some kind of digital curriculum that's easy to import into Schoology, because Schoology's its own entity with its own grade book, and Schoology doesn't really track the data and the growth and some of those pieces like the McGraw-Hill did. But with Schoology, you're not locked into using their curriculum that they give you either. You can use lots of different resources, more flexible, teacher-created, student-created, share things in the Google suite and all those things back and forth between teachers and other students. Gotcha.
So even the McGraw-Hill product, we can set that on Schoology.
Okay.
Leaving N-grade aside, the McGraw-Hill product we can utilize within
The
Schoology.
curriculum part,
Yes, the digital content.
the digital content. You can go to any vendor and buy the digital textbook and have
And
it
if we can't set
accessible
it-
on Schoology.
If we can't set it directly, we can take a link that will just take
Take
it
you
to us
right
from
to that.
Schoology.
Gotcha. So that question I asked might be a little premature, which is how, if you had to compare the two, which is a little bit easier to use or teacher-friendly?
Now, they can compare their McGraw-Hill product with the resources that they're looking at right now. And Stephanie and Brent are both on the new curricular resources that we're reviewing right now.
Okay.
They can do some comparison with those. But the LMSs, we really didn't. I don't think anybody got into N-grade enough to compare it.
Gotcha. I've used the gradebook in Schoology, so I know that
Yeah.
how, whether it's easy or difficult, or what might be difficult for me might be easy for, or vice versa.
The reason we didn't start there is because of the lack of connection between that and Progress.
Got it.
And so that's why we haven't particularly gone there yet with our staff. It doesn't mean that somebody hasn't tried it, but we haven't, with our BLTs, we haven't trained them yet to train the staff on that piece yet.
And the BLTs are regular classroom teachers who are getting additional tech training through our tech department. I think John Bailey has been very key in helping with the school implementation.
And you have the building technician who they can call on.
Just kind of that first level. The high school has 3 this year. Donna, Wayne, and Beth, I think are the 3.
We probably have a little bit more than that, maybe not officially.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
Yeah.
Joe, yes. Oh, that's right, Joe, so there's 4.
but that's who we.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's what they're for.
he's a wealth of knowledge.
Don't touch that. So we also had, Amanda Van Nel wasn't able to come tonight, but she sent an email, and I went ahead and printed that for you if you wanted to look at that. And Randy Gray as well, sent me a text message, said that he was unable to come, but his biggest comment was just to make sure whatever we purchase in the digital environment, that the training is enough, that our staff feel, comfortable with the product and able to implement it.
guess, since this is a curriculum question, and Regina, this goes to you, I guess. How do these different vendors, and do all of them connect or link their curriculum to, say questions, but what students need to know for AIR assessments all the way, are they all pretty standard? Because AIR is Ohio specific, not like PARC, which was national, so these companies then tweak their curriculums so that it prepares students to take.
So every presentation, they're gonna tell us right off the top that they are completely aligned to our standards.
Okay.
Part of what the review is about is ensuring that they are aligned to our standards. They all talk about how their questions are aligned to the AIR questions, or to the PARC questions, which are pretty much the AIR questions, similar to the PARC questions. So, they talk about that, you know, even though we don't particularly call our standards Common Core standards anymore, they are basically the Common Core standards. So when they talk about being aligned to Common Core, language arts, and math, they have products that they have built after the Common Core has come on board. Social studies and science is a little bit different, and so it takes more of that particular review. We have one product that, no, actually, we decided not to look at it. That their test generator for the product wasn't yet aligned
Right.
to the next generation assessments, and so that was a product we decided not to look at because of that. So those are all review pieces that will be particularly important to go through and review.
So my understanding, we're piloting some other than McGrail at this time, or
We are just reviewing.
We're just reviewing what they're.
We have the capability of getting on there, looking at both the teacher and the student side of things, and what they have on.
Okay, are we
And
going?
having
to look at
McGraw-Hill,
something
at least
else,
that
or-
gives us a base of
Okay.
what we know. At least what they have, but also comparable to the other, well, for us.
So there's
to the
really two
other groups.
components. Are we going with digital, and then if we do, are we using McGraw-Hill? Is that the two?
I believe that really a blended environment is what we found from the pilot, that our teachers and students both think will be most successful for our district. We have students who really like to be in that blended environment, or that online environment, but maybe not all the time. So having that, you know, that pendulum that swings, and we talk about that all the time, that a blended environment allows us to go on both sides of that. To have the digital environment, to get the practice, to get some online assessments, to do those pieces. But, you know, Stephanie talks often about paper, pencil, and math, and how that's still very important for our students. So we don't want to create an environment that swings so far to one side that we're missing a piece of it. And that's really why we're talking about that blended environment. That really came out of the pilot as well. Going into the pilot, we really felt like we were looking at an online environment. And through the pilot with not only, and again, our pilot consisted of Algebra 1 students, which were freshmen, American History, which were sophomore, English 11, which is the letter that you have there from Amanda, which were our juniors, and then Randy Gray had AP Chem, which were seniors. And so we tried to get a variety of students, different levels, at different levels. And what we found in most all of those classrooms were that students still wanted some paper pencil pieces. They didn't want to be on a computer all of the time, and that's where that blended piece came. We surveyed our students twice. We surveyed them once at the beginning, once at the end of the pilot, and they stayed pretty true to their thoughts throughout that survey.
And we had also talked about whatever direction we were going to go, you were going to find a school or school system somewhere that you were going to find out how the implementation went. Have we had any luck in finding that?
Well, so with the products, there's not particular a need to go to the schools that we were going to go to for N grade and for the entire McGraw-Hill because we're not implementing them. So,
Right, but a blended situation.
so what we have now are, we're looking at different products like math. They're looking at all Hope Mifflin Harcourt products. So they will be able to look at schools with those particular products. Social studies is right now looking at all three, Hope Mifflin Harcourt, Pearson, and McGraw-Hill products. So as we went through those reviews, we asked for schools that are using the different products so that we can communicate with those schools, visit them if need to, that sort of thing.
And we
As far as
did take a trip out to a school in Indiana,
Right.
and we looked at McGraw-Hill implementation of the language arts framework.
And math, it was in the
Yeah.
lower grades.
Right, at a middle school. And, you know, they were in the midst of an early school-wide, they were doing it at a grade level, I believe. And, we got some feedback about N-grade, their learning management system there as well.
Same problem.
They were having some difficulty with it, but,
I would just think it would be beneficial, especially,
Our
we
high school
can
visited Chillicothe High
learn from
School.
somebody else's mistakes.
That
So we
has a
don't have to do
one-to-one environment, so we have looked at them. We have looked at Forest Hills, John is from Forest Hills, we've done a visit there as well, looking at how they do a BYOD and a one-to-one environment both. And so we have looked at some different schools that are implementing. Steve has communicated with Clinton Massey, who is in a one-to-one environment as well. So he's done some of that piece as far as what is the technology needed and the support needed for that one-to-one environment, where we're looking more at the digital piece and the curriculum piece as far as what it would be that we would be using to teach within that environment.
Steve's also been researching what might be an appropriate student device. So he's been looking at that over the last couple of years, the capabilities and the technical capacities on those devices, and the price has dropped significantly.
Yes, it is.
So, that's another piece, the technical piece, and then also looking at if there were to be, say, a significant number of additional student devices that would come into the learning environment, how are we going to support that on the tech side? We
And
replaced.
that's why I'd be curious about these other schools, because they
Right.
would have,
Right.
well, we had to beef up the IT section, or we had to do this, or we had to
Yeah.
do that.
And that will be the case.
And then, as a part of our replacement of the teacher desktops, for example, this year, the high school staff has actually the device that is going to be the portable device that they can carry around the room and utilize, using the LMS and utilizing the digital pieces as well, and project.
So the teachers have those this year?
Yes,
In the high school.
yes.
9 through 12.
And then we're looking at phasing those as a part of a replacement at the junior high next.
Okay.
Probably in the spring, so that the staff starts to have time to get used to those, and they can use them during the summer so that they're up to speed when they come in next fall.
And those are more Chromebooks than they would be like teacher
No,
laptops?
no, actually,
No, they
they're-
are laptops.
They're actual laptops.
The student
Yeah.
machine that we're looking at is a Windows machine as well, it's not a Chromebook.
Gotcha.
It's like a Surface.
It is not a Surface,
No.
it's a
It's a Yoga.
durable laptop.
Oh, it's, okay, but it is a laptop.
It's a Windows-based machine, yeah.
Okay.
It's a machine that's come way down in price, it's a little more expensive than the Chromebook, but has a great deal more capability than the Chromebook has.
And that's the one you were saying that can catch. and
It can, yes,
Right.
because it's
So it'd be like the
not as good of a
netbooks.
machine as yours, but it
Yeah.
is a.
They would be able to download some.
It'll have a hard drive, it works just like your desktop computer, it's a laptop.
Some of the
And
networks.
ours have, where you can write on them, and they have like a
Okay.
tablet
Yeah,
where it
flip.
has, it can flip, so ours have that as well. So I know that I've practiced with that too.
And those work right through the projector and right onto like into the smart, I know. Some days.
Some days, yep.
We have
So
noticed
it's
some
still
issues with,
Yeah.
multiple devices kind of communicating with each other, so from the math department, a lot of us use smartboard technology, but we also have the projector, but we also have the laptop, so to get all three to communicate, but they've been working on a lot to try and make sure that works a little bit more smoothly.
As we move around, some of us use smart boards, others use projectors. Not everybody does the same thing. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else you guys want to
So you're ready to start, right?
let us know?
Well, I think that's one of the big things that, we talked about, and it wasn't just myself, it's a lot of the other staff members, is what does it mean to truly be digital? And, the expectations of what is using it. I think the first, as we talked about, was just going completely digital. Let me tell you, that's not gonna work like that. I mean, in my class, I like to do a hands-on situations as much as I can. I still believe that this is not going to equal this.
Right.
Okay. So I think there has to be, we as teachers have to know that as well, and we have to blend that, as Ravina was saying, right into what we do on a daily basis.
And learning from the students, when we try to do all the digital every day, all the time, just to see what it would feel like, that's how we started. When we started in late September,
Right.
early October,
So, right.
and when we just did it as a blended, we saw their relief so much more, where they could learn a little bit, but still go back to what they were comfortable with. So I think that was important for us to see in them, that they were
Is anybody at the high school experimenting with any flipped classrooms? Anybody?
I personally have not.
I know there's a teacher in our department that has done a little bit this year for the first time, just sending home where they've been watching some different videos and then coming back and having more work time in class.
Yeah. I know it lends itself pretty good in math.
Math, that's what I was gonna say, probably math and science, I think we could talk through that a little bit, so.
I know we did compare some data from last year to this year to different students, and they were very similar, flipped versus not flipped, but it's the first time it's ever tried it.
A flip classroom.
Yeah.
Think about it this way. Student comes in and the teacher gives the lecture and then the students go home and do the homework. In a flipped classroom, the teacher videos themselves giving the lecture and the students go home. They watch it on YouTube or on their Chromebook or whatever. They're watching the lecture and there is no homework to do at home. They come into class and when the teacher's there, they're working on the problems and homework when there's actually someone there in the classroom to help them if they're struggling. So it's completely flipped from what you might think a typical classroom setup.
Traditional setup,
Which is really similar if you were to assign a homework, if you're able to input your answer digitally and it can tell you in instant feedback.
Right.
That there's a mistake and it gives you the link to maybe you should reread this. Kind of, it doesn't have to be flipped as much, but at least you get that feedback versus now when they're writing it out, they don't know whether they're right or wrong until they come back
Till they come back
to
to
have it
class, that's
checked.
right.
So there's a benefit to
And they may
that.
have done the entire handout or whatever, it might be the incorrect way, and then they get,
Correct.
and instead of having one wrong, they practiced right exactly 20 of them wrong.
But we also learned with math, if they did all this work right and it was a right or wrong answer, which is how it is in a lot of the air testing, state testing, so you have to get used to that. But whereas we would always get try to explain, here's what the little mistake is, the computer did not do that. It
That's
was
exactly
either
right.
all in or.
You're all in or all out,
It's
that's
or
right.
wrong.
Anything else, Michael?
No, good, you answered my question.
So say thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, we appreciate it, thank you very much. All right. Thank you, ladies, for being patient, thank you very much. Okay. This time, board work session, begin to discuss which phase we're going with, just go ahead, no, you had a lot of information that you gave out. I don't know that any of us have enough information in front of us to even ask questions, other than there was one, I've seen the replacement costs for the individual, I don't have those in this here.
Is this tomorrow night's presentation?
Yes.
I don't think that those are in either one.
Well, yeah, but there's a whole lot more slides than what is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can send you that, we were fine tuning that this afternoon, so
The dollar
I can send you the whole
Yeah.
presentation via email.
I thought there was good feedback and some good questions asked. But to be totally honest, I printed this out earlier and I read over it and I'm still trying to digest. Yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons to every one of these options. And I wish we had a cut and dry answer at this point, but I don't think that we do.
Some of the cut and dry starts to become whether or not you fall on the side of one high school or two.
That's the big.
Once you
that's the
decide
big
which side of that
question.
fence you fall on, then some of the
Right,
other
that-
pieces
right,
start to,
and then
the
that's-
dominoes start to fall into place.
Correct, correct. That drives a whole lot of stuff. You've got that decision, and then it's a matter of, do you want, 3 elementaries or 2? I mean, it's not as complicated.
I think when parents are answering that question, from what I see, when they say one high school or 2, I think they were telling you the ideal of what they would like their high school to be. I don't think a lot of them were thinking out, okay, just make one this amount, and then you're gonna have another high school with that many kids. I think they thought we were gonna just cap out and just have a high school that big. I don't know that they're seeing down the road, at least some of the people I talked to did not. They were very surprised to hear that people wanted 2 high schools. They're like, we don't want to be like that. Then why'd you answer the question? But I think they weren't seeing, they were looking at, we'd like to see only 1,800 kids at the high school, period. Like,
Well, yeah, that's
similar
totally
to that.
unrealistic,
Of
because
course
they're
it
gonna continue to grow.
You've
So
got
it
that
never
little
occurred to
gap.
me
Of course
that you
it
would say, okay, we're not taking your kid.
Well, yeah,
Of
but again,
course,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
But you don't sit with
Sorry.
Well, we like that idea, we do like that idea,
Yeah.
where we go, we don't want that one. That family can move in, but that one,
Yeah. Oh, if I only could.
Let me ask you a question. When we first got together and you did your presentation, and I want to say you guys have done a wonderful job on what you've gone out and done, Troy, and Christie and all that, and what you've done. Do I see, and tell me if I'm using the wrong terminology here. Do I see a push for a new building as opposed to adding on to the junior high and the intermediate? Because I think if tomorrow I had to, I mean, when we first started talking, what do we want to do? Do we want to add on to the two buildings and go from there? Do we want to look at building a new building? If tomorrow I had to go out and start pushing a new building to the community, I would probably sit at home. Because we just added the junior high school, what, 7, 8 years ago, the same with the intermediate. Myself, I would like to exhaust everything we can exhaust before we even look at a new building. Granted, we've got the 44 acres down on Ford Road, which is great. But I think if we try to push a new building, and personally, I don't think it would pass, not tomorrow anyway. If we would expand and exhaust all of our possibilities first, and then go back and say, hey, well, we've done this to save money, now we have to spend a little money and do this because of the 200 kids a year. I think if we would go out and try to sell a new building, and then come back and say, well, we need more space, but now we're going to expand the other two buildings. If I were John Q. Public, I'd say, well, why did you do that in the first place? Am I looking at it wrong, or?
I think.
'Cause I've heard that-
I mean, I think option number one does what you're asking. The problem is that you are going to max out the high school.
I understand
So at
that.
some point, there has to be a new high school building. So knowing that informs a lot of how we handle the buildings that you do have.
I understand that. When does that point come about?
When do you max out of the high school?
Well, when do we max out? I mean, before we say, hey, we have.
Now.
There-
For a lot of your buildings,
Yeah, there's-
before you're built.
Oh, we
you
have
are
very
maxed
little
out
room
all
left.
of
I
them.
understand.
When you were
Right.
talking about the 2 little additions on this building, how many students are you getting?
If it becomes a middle school, we could probably get another 300 students
Here.
here.
If this became a middle school?
And
What
go
if
from
we- what if
1,500
we
capacity to
1,800,
1,800.
I would feel comfortable saying this could become an 1,800 student middle school
What
with this
about high school?
addition.
If we didn't move anything, if we just added that space, how many more high schoolers can we accommodate?
Do we have space here? I
No,
thought we.
she was
No,
talking about
they-
adding
just 2
on.
little
There was-
additions.
There were some additions she was proposing.
So right now,
Do
we
we have
15.
So
space here to add on?
it's
That's what she was,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's two spaces.
very, very small.
Because I was under the assumption when we added on, this is it.
I mean, it is, I mean, it was, the question is, can we squeeze a little bit more? You could add more than 1,500 in this building, but you're not gonna be happy with it. Because you're gonna have to increase your number of kids in a class, you're not gonna have adequate athletic spaces, you're not gonna have an adequate auditorium. So can you do it? Yes, but no one's gonna be happy.
So if you're making it a middle school and adding 300 more students,
You can do it because they don't need they don't need as large a support spaces.
Right.
That's why you can add, that's why you can give
Yeah,
the middle school.
you don't have them driving, you don't have them
Is-
in extracurricular,
Right,
an
some of those
extracurricular program.
extracurricular spaces.
No, I understand.
But at the end of the day, you can't expand the Butlerville piece because the property's not big enough.
Right.
You
Correct.
can't expand Hamilton Mainville
No.
because the property's not big enough.
Right.
You can't really technically expand here, maybe a couple little things, but generally speaking, this property is
You're
maxed out here.
Yes, yes,
You have the ability to add a space at the junior high,
which
you
we
can do.
suggest in all of our options.
and you have the ability to add space at the intermediate,
Which we
and you
suggest.
have
Right.
44 acres that you could
Yes,
expand there, and those are really your only three options.
You can build on Salem site and replace Salem.
Right, but then you gotta have something to do with those students while you're building.
You can
because-
build a building, you can, like the 1,000-student elementary,
Mhm.
you could build that building behind Salem, leave Salem going while you're building that new one.
Okay,
And then as soon as that one opens, you tear down the existing Salem.
but then that displaces the bus garage probably too then, right? Your
With,
transportation.
not with the
1,000 is
1,000-student elementary
Okay.
option. If we want a 1,500, if we want a 1,500, then yes, you're gonna need to take over the transportation part.
And
So
a-
yes, you summarized it.
And 1,000 people at that site at Salem could handle, I'm asking, I'm not telling, I'm asking. If you had an elementary building at the Salem site that housed 1,000, that would be enough to take care of from here east, meaning Butlerville, Morrow, that site, that 1,000-student building would be able to handle the number of students we have now, plus the growth, depending on how many grades you put there.
We have 1,100 at Salem.
Yeah, but you got pre-KK and then you got 3 and 4.
So-
You would need to add in a new building. You can't just replace, you can't just build a new
Okay.
building at Salem. There has to be another
Right.
new building in addition to that one.
Okay.
Um,
Because that building right now, even though it's towards the end of its life cycle, can still house 1,000 to 1,100 students. But we're talking about replacing it with 1,000-student elementary school, so it's a wash.
Correct.
But it's 21st century.
Right.
But it's appropriate.
It's a wash in terms of number of seats.
Correct.
But if you're gonna grow, you gotta add some, because once you,
Correct. Right, which is why.
Get rid of 1,000, add
which is why
1,000.
there needs to be another new building in addition to that replacement.